Good morning, Saturday morning here. Very interesting few hours over the last 48 hours. I want to talk today about the brainwashing of the media. For those of you who don't know, I grew up from birth in a religious cult, which I came out of when I was 23 years old. And I was brainwashed from birth all the way through my life until I was 23 about certain things that turned out to be complete and utter rubbish. So I have a very good understanding about brainwashing. I decided when I was in my late 20s to challenge it. Interestingly, the British government said it's not brainwashing, it's indoctrination, which is exactly the same but with a posh name. It's a bit like Donald Trump using the word fake news, where we've known this. It was called propaganda before, but it has a different name, so it makes it sound better or worse. But currently, it's very, very interesting about the mainstream media, complete and utter brainwashing about the coronavirus. Now, they take their advice, the British government and the American government, from a guy at the Imperial College London, called Professor Neil Ferguson, and a specialist in this field. Now, he told both the American authorities and the British authorities that the expected death rate would be around 2.2 million in America and about 500,000 in the UK from the coronavirus. That's so the government made their decisions based on that. Now, I understand the government going to specialists to find out that information. But interestingly enough, a couple of days ago, another specialist decided to challenge that. And then suddenly, Professor Neil Ferguson completely changed his projection and said, well, instead of 500,000 people dying in the UK, it's probably likely to be nearer 20,000. And then he added on, and probably half of those, so 10,000 of those, will die of natural causes in the year anyway. So only 10,000 people will die because of coronavirus, which is actually less than influenza for the past few years. That doesn't take away from people dying, but being very, very sad. And lots of people do die, and that's one thing that's guaranteed in your life. You're going to die. When it comes, it's for the families and those surrounding, it's not very nice. But it's very interesting that he downgraded these projections 2 days ago. And there is absolutely no mention by the media at all about this. And what I find funny is, just by coincidence, all the spokespeople have suddenly got the coronavirus and need to go into isolation. And in my view, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like they've all gone into hiding. Well, they think, well, hang on a second, we've made a complete cock-up of this, and we've done everything based on what he told us, and that was a load of rubbish. So they've given themselves a few days, the weekend or whatever, to decide what they're going to do. But it's interesting. I've always, since I grew up, as a child growing up, I was told that the end of the world would 100% be coming before the year 2000. I didn't need to study at school, didn't need to do all these things, didn't matter. This was the Plymouth Brethren's teaching, which I grew up in. When I was 23, having had an arranged marriage from the age of 19, by the age of 23 I had 3 children. That's their way of keeping you in here, reproductive, at a young age. I started to challenge, and then when I started to challenge and came out of the religion, my family completely disowned me from that day to this. But you start to challenge things rather than just taking what they say for granted and then finding out years down the line it was all a load of bullshit. And as I've said before, if it looks like shit and it smells like shit, it probably is shit. And at this moment in time, the media, they're all sponsored by the same people. They've all got the same stuff. And this is, now you're locked in your houses. Why don't you do a bit of research and start going outside the box and look in? And you'll start to find out stuff And I've got people who've been watching my little updates with humour and just saying, tell me where you get this information from. And I've shown it to them. And it's interesting. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong, but have a look at it. It's like, if you look at the Burj Khalifa as an example, where I work in the Middle East, if you look at the Burj Khalifa from one side in the sunlight, it looks completely different to if you look at it from the other side in the shade. But it's the same building. But it's very important to have a look from every angle and aspect and see what is actually going on. Because one thing's for sure, they're not telling us the truth. 1,000,000% they're not. But what are they doing behind the scenes? I have my own theories, which I've shared with you, but it's very important that you don't get brainwashed by the media, because the media have a plan, and then I'll give you one little short example. Piers Morgan picked up on one single tweet the other day that a 7-year-old girl was stabbed to death. And there's been absolutely no coverage of it in the media at all, because that's not their agenda. Their agenda is coronavirus, because something else is going on behind the scenes. Whether it's to do with 5G, whether it's to do with a global reset, whatever it's to do with, everybody has a theory, and nobody will actually know until it happens. Because whatever way you're look at it, we're being lied to from every angle. And we're not being told the whole truth, but do yourself a favour, have a look. Because I grew up thinking one thing, and then finding out it was very, very different. But anyway, it's Saturday. Remember, Jesus loves you, but everyone else thinks you're a twat.